Self-love, it's a term that gets thrown around all the time, right? But what does it actually mean? Is it just about bubble baths and saying nice things to yourself in the mirror? Or is there something deeper, something more essential to our happiness? Well, today we're going to dig into the real psychology behind truly loving yourself, and I think you might be a little surprised by what we uncover.
All right, so let's just get right to it. The big question that I think is on everyone's mind is all this focus on self-love just a fancy way of saying selfishness? It's a real fear, and honestly, it's what keeps a lot of people from even exploring this stuff.
And the short answer is a big, resounding no. See, psychology draws a really clear line in the sand here. Being narcissistic is all about thinking you're better than other people. True self-love, on the other hand, is about building a solid foundation for yourself, accepting who you are, flaws and all. It's not about putting yourself up on a pedestal, it's about giving yourself solid ground to stand on. So, here's our game plan for today. First, we're going to look at something called the self-esteem trap and see why the way we usually think about self-worth can actually backfire. Then we'll explore a much better alternative, self-compassion. After that, we'll get into the practical side with tools like acceptance and boundaries. And finally, we'll wrap it all up with a toolkit you can start using today.
Okay, let's dive into our first section, the self-esteem trap. I mean, for years, we've all been told that having high self-esteem is like the ultimate goal, right? But what if chasing after it, constantly trying to feel good about ourselves, is actually part of the problem?
So what is self-esteem really? When you boil it down, it's a judgment. It's a performance review that we give ourselves. We're always asking, am I good enough? Am I valuable? Did I do well today? It's like you're giving yourself a grade every single day.
But here's the catch, and it's a big one. The problem isn't actually having self-esteem. The real issue is the constant, exhausting chase. This nonstop need to prove we're worthy, to get an A on that internal report card. That's where things start to fall apart.
And this is where you can really see the hidden costs. Because self-esteem is so fragile, it's a total roller coaster. It shoots up when we succeed and crashes when we fail. It makes us dependent on what other people think, on our looks or our latest accomplishment. This can lead us to constantly compare ourselves to others and sometimes even push them down to feel a little bit taller. It's a defensive game, and as researchers like Dr. Kristen Neff point out, in its extreme, this chase is directly linked to a rise in narcissism.
And this quote, man, it just hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? Our whole culture tells us that being average is basically failing. We all feel this immense pressure to be special, to be above average, but that's a race you can never, ever win. So if this self-esteem game is rigged, what's the alternative?
Well, that brings us to a much more stable, much more resilient path, self-compassion. And honestly, this is a total game changer. It's not about judging yourself at all, good or bad. It's about changing the entire way you relate to yourself, especially when you mess up.
Just take a look at this comparison here. It really lays it all out. See, on the left, self-esteem, it's all about judging, comparing, asking, am I better than them? But on the right, self-compassion is based on kindness. Self-esteem is that roller coaster we talked about, but self-compassion is like a stable anchor. It's there for you whether you win or lose, giving you real emotional strength.
So what are we actually talking about when we say self-compassion? Well, a great way to think about it is treating yourself with the same kindness and understanding that you would offer to a really good friend who's having a hard time. It's not about rating yourself. It's about relating to yourself with warmth.
It really boils down to 3 core ideas. First, self-kindness. Simple, right? Instead of beating yourself up, you're gentle. Second, common humanity. This is huge. It's the simple recognition that everyone makes mistakes, everyone suffers, you're not alone in this. And third, mindfulness, which is just about seeing your difficult feelings clearly, without letting them totally take over.
All right, so this all sounds great, but how do you actually do it? Well, a really foundational skill, one that everything else is built on, is something called radical acceptance. It's the first step to being compassionate with yourself when things get tough.
Radical acceptance is this incredibly powerful tool. And its goal is, well, it's simple, but it's also incredibly profound. To stop pain from snowballing into suffering. Look, pain is just a part of life. We can't avoid it. But suffering, a lot of that comes from fighting reality, from wishing things were different than they are.
And this is maybe the most important thing to get about this. Acceptance does not mean approval. You don't have to like it. You don't have to think it's fair. You just have to stop wasting your energy fighting the fact that it is. It's that radical shift in your mind from this shouldn't be happening to, okay, This is happening. And the payoff? It's huge, and it's almost immediate. All that energy you were pouring into being angry or in denial, that whole why me spiral, suddenly it's freed up, and you can redirect it to what actually matters, figuring out how to cope, how to move forward, and how to take care of yourself in this new reality.
Okay, moving on to another super practical, concrete way to show yourself some love: boundaries. This is where you actively teach the world, and maybe more importantly, you teach yourself how you deserve to be treated.
Now, I know what you might be thinking. Isn't that selfish? But it's actually the opposite. Setting boundaries is about taking ownership of your own life. It's you saying, I respect myself enough to protect my time, my energy, and my peace. It's a powerful signal of self-worth.
And we can kind of break boundaries down into 3 main buckets. You've got your mental boundaries, the right to your own thoughts and opinions. You've got physical boundaries, your right to your own personal space. And then you've got emotional boundaries. You're in charge of your feelings and other people are in charge of theirs.
You know, here's a really powerful reframe for you. Clear boundaries are actually a gift you give to other people. Why? Because they create clarity. They get rid of all the guesswork, and everyone knows exactly where they stand. And that's the kind of environment where real, healthy relationships can grow.
Okay, we've covered a lot of the what and the why. So now, let's get super practical. Let's pull all of this together and build your very own self-love toolkit. There's this philosopher, Erich Fromm, who had this amazing take on love. He said it's not just some feeling that happens to you, it's a skill you practice. And it has these 4 parts. When you apply them to yourself, it's a perfect roadmap. It starts with care, just actively tending to your own life. Then responsibility, taking ownership of your own needs. Followed by respect, seeing yourself clearly, good and bad, without judgment. And finally, knowledge, being curious about who you are and never stopping that journey of self-discovery.
So what does that actually look like day to day? Well, it can be really simple stuff. It's about noticing that harsh inner voice and choosing to be kinder. It's about actually taking a moment to celebrate your wins, even the tiny ones. It's carving out time for things that actually fill you up, not just things you feel like you should do. And this one's so important. It's about having the self-respect to ask for help when you need it.
All right, so let's bring this all home right back to you right here, right now. Because self-love isn't some far-off destination you finally arrive at. It's a practice. It's a choice you make again and again in all the small moments of your day. So I'll leave you with this question. What is one small way you can choose to be kinder to yourself today?